All right, today we're diving into something pretty tough to talk about: the documented realities inside German industrial pig farms. Now, everything we're about to cover comes directly from the source material, and, well, it paints a really stark picture of what's happening behind closed doors. So let's just get right into it.
And the source material? Wow, it does not hold back at all. It kicks off with this absolutely shocking account. Workers smashed piglets on the floor with their bare hands. I mean, that's a brutal way to start, and according to the people who documented this, it's really just the tip of the iceberg.
So where does this story even begin? Well, it starts right at birth. Let's take a look at what the investigation found happens in a piglet's very first moments of life. Okay, so for any piglets that are born too small or maybe seem a little weak, basically if they're not seen as profitable, one of the documented practices is to just smash them on the floor. Yeah. This practice, it's sometimes called thumping, and it's a direct result of a system where, efficiency and profit just completely overshadow any thought for the animal's well-being.
And if it's not that, the investigation documented another method: workers breaking the piglets' necks with their bare hands. We have to remember, we're talking about newborn animals, just moments old.
But what's maybe even more horrifying is that these methods, they're not always instantaneous. The report actually describes piglets being thrown into buckets or just onto the floor of a hallway, still alive, and then just left there to die. A slow, agonizing death.
So for the piglets that actually make it past this brutal beginning, you'd hope things would get better. But life doesn't get any easier. Their entire existence, and their mothers too, is pretty much defined by constant confinement and pain. A huge part of these places is something called a Kostenstand, which is basically a gestation crate, and it is literally what it sounds like, a metal cage. It's so tight that the mother's sow can't even turn around. The findings describe her just standing there day after day on these slatted floors that cause her hooves to get bloody and injured.
The piglets themselves have to go through a bunch of really painful procedures, and it's all done without any anesthesia. Their tails are docked, cut off, and that's supposedly to stop them from biting each other in these insanely overcrowded pens. And on top of that, their teeth are ground down.
The source uses a very specific German word for the living conditions: Brühe. And that basically translates to slurry or broth. It's this disgusting mixture of blood, feces, and urine that the animals are just forced to live in, to stand in, to lie in every single day.
And that brings us to the final chapter of this story, as documented in the report: how these animals' lives actually end, the journey to the slaughterhouse. This is where one of the most critical failures happens, during the slaughter process itself. The source lays out this absolutely horrific sequence of events. First, the attempt to stun the animal. It fails. The bolt gun misses its mark, so the pig is still completely conscious, screaming, kicking, as its throat is being cut. So you have to be asking yourself, right? Are these just a few horrible, isolated cases? A couple of bad apples? Well, the source argues that the answer is a definitive no. This isn't about rogue employees or one bad facility. It's about the entire system. And just to give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about, the investigation focused on just one of these facilities. And in that single facility, there were around 25,000 pigs. 25,000! I mean, at that scale, it's not a farm anymore, it's an industrial machine. And any individual animal is just completely lost.
So why? Why does all this suffering happen? That's the central question the source really tries to answer. What's the driving force behind all these practices?
And according to the source, the answer is crystal clear. It's all about the enormous pressure for profit, which leaves absolutely no room for compassion. Think about it. When a system's only goal is to make as much as possible for as little as possible, animal welfare isn't even a consideration. It just becomes an inconvenient, irrelevant side effect.
This next quote, it really sums up the entire argument of the source material. This suffering is not an isolated case, but part of a system designed for maximum exploitation. The core takeaway here is that these horrible things we've been talking about, they aren't bugs in the system that need to be fixed. They are features of the system. It's designed to work this way.
And finally, the source brings it all home, connecting these conditions directly to us, the consumers. It ends with this incredibly provocative statement: whoever consumes meat from such facilities supports a system of organized animal cruelty. And that's a really powerful thought to leave you with, right? It forces us to think about the real-world consequences of the system we've just examined.